It's almost 2 weeks since a 15-year-old boy, Jesse James, was shot dead near his home in the Manchester district of Moss Side. He wasn't a gang member. Police said he'd simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But his death has focused attention on the gangs and gun crime in the city.
Disturbing footage has emerged of gangs showing off their deadly weapons. This film shows teenagers posing for the camera with handguns and sawn-off shotguns, as Elaine Wilcox reports.
These are teenagers keen to show off their frightening arsenal of weapons. The footage shows 4 gang members in a house in Wythenshawe. One waves a handgun at the lens. In another house, another living room, more weapons are laid out on display.
In a living room in South Manchester, 4 gang members pose for the cameras. They're careful to conceal their identities behind hoods and balaclavas, but they're keen to show off a gun, which is waved at the lens. The footage, which was obtained by the BBC, shows one gang member holding a sawn-off shotgun, and it reveals another living room with what looks like an arsenal of weapons on the coffee table. The number of guns in circulation in Manchester is unknown. The police can only estimate. But when we spoke to gang members ourselves, they were clear. Guns are easy to come by and plentiful if you know where to look.
Guns are the biggest issue round here. At the end of the day, they've got gangs with 40 to 50 people in them, and I'd say 30 to 40 of them people will all be strapped up. Like, you get 9mm semi-automatics, then you've got the Mac 10s. You've got 150 quid, 200 quid maximum. You can walk to the bottom shop and you can buy a gun, you can buy a semi-automatic gun.
The gang members we spoke to were teenagers. They denied using guns, but admitting that violence between rival gangs is common, they don't see a bright future.
A lot of these hot guys with guns around here, at least one of us here, 1 in 4, are going to be killed by the time we're 20 odd. At least one of us, or maybe 2, maybe all of us, you never know.
Don't you ever feel bad, though, if someone gets hurt?
If it's not them, it could be me. At the end of the day, saying look out for number 1, better them than me.
In the year 2000, Benchill in Wythenshawe was recognised as the most deprived of England's 8,414 wards.
Wythenshawe is an area that's got a very strong sense of its own identity and a very strong sense of community. But it has been ravaged really by some of the economic changes that happened in the last part of the last century. Lots of people becoming unemployed, in fact a whole generation of people who experienced long-term unemployment, and this did have a negative impact on what otherwise was a very positive and prosperous area. At the end of the 1990s, it came as a great shock to local people that Bench Hill was measured as the poorest ward in the whole country. I mean, to be described as the poorest area in the whole of England and Wales was a massive shock to people. Some people didn't believe it. Everybody wanted to fight back against it.
It's always been a green and pleasant land as such. It was always known as the Garden City when it was first built. And if you notice, people have a preconception about Wythenshawe, but as you drive through it and you walk through it, there's wide green, grass verges with tree-lined boulevards. It sounds like I'm describing Paris or something like that, but that is Wythenshawe. It's a very green place. In the past, it's been seen as quite deprived. Bench Hill was a ward that was possibly the most deprived ward in the country. It did certainly Manchester at one stage. That has been split. It's now made up from 2 different wards, but the money has been brought in to address the problem that was there, and the problem is certainly being addressed. There is a lot of activity and there's a lot of new build and new adventures going on.
When I was moving here, my previous placement was in Stockport, and when people heard I was moving to Wythenshawe, there were a number of very negative comments that were made, especially this area of Bench Hill. It's regarded as being a very deprived and very violent area. So as an outsider, because I come from Liverpool, I didn't know the area, so I came quite worried and concerned, and was amazed by most of the reality is that, as I say, they are a very warm, generous, humorous people. And I find as a Liverpudlian, the sense of humour is incredibly similar. Very quick, quite a lot of sarcasm and irony. So I felt I settled in quite well and was welcomed and supported, in spite of them themselves supporting very strange football teams here.
There's a whole range of work that has happened and needs to continue, but I think the important thing to recognise here is that we have a real and vibrant economy in this area, not reliant on government, but reliant very much on the airport, for example, which is a huge employer, and the many businesses, including major leading global companies who now invest in this area and provide employment opportunities. So that's a very important first building block. But I'm pleased to say that with the kind of investment that we've seen, people are seizing these opportunities and it is increasing the profile of the area and the confidence within it.
As you drive through Wythenshawe from the motorway, you'll see all the new buildings, new housing, new businesses. You've got the Concord Business Park, the Atlas Business Park. As you go past the old spaces in the old local authority housing estates, there's all new estates there now. It's all intermingling with the new properties. And like I say, there's just a different air about the place.
If you go now round Bench Hill, nearly 10 years later, you'll see the investment in housing, you'll see the improvements in the environment. You'll see, for example, the new facility there that I visited just a few days ago, residential care for elderly people, state-of-the-art, world-class facilities. And then also the new community centre in Bench Hill. We've got one of the primary schools has been rebuilt, another one they're about to rebuild. So we're seeing big improvements. And I think as well we've seen some very strong leadership from a number of key individuals, local head teachers, people involved in Willow Park, people involved in community organisations. And they've really led the way in giving people back the kind of confidence they need.
Whilst on the surface things have improved, underneath some of the area's problems still seem to remain. It seems there is a prevalent gang culture in Wythenshawe, and to the right people, with the right connections, drugs and guns are easily accessible.
Crime, drugs, a lot of gangs.
Guns. Little bastards ain't got respect these days. Back in the day it used to be just have it with your fist game on, or the odd knife, as you can see, do you know what I mean? But besides that, it's just gone all gun mad now.
There's a lot of guns going around here, but there always is, isn't there?
Little kids and all that, innit?
That's what I mean.
More than what? 10 minutes you could pick up whatever you wanted, I could have delivered to within 10 minutes. You name anything. Heroin, Charlie, rock, skunk, solid, you name it. Gun.
Get a gun, yeah, like you're going to get your bud.
Sure.
How easy is it to get hold of a gun?
Very.
Do you carry it around regularly?
Now and again.
It's so easy, there's that many fucking people. Round there, it is unbelievable. It's like little turf wars that happen.
Bench Hill boys and New Green boys. But like, at each shops you've got different gangs, haven't you? Everywhere you've got different gangs, really.
You've got the New Green boys, you've got the Greenwood boys. I'm no one's boy, I'm my own boy. Like old school.
Because there's a lot of people out there that you know, it's either you kill them or they kill you. So you'd rather kill them before they kill you.
Stay alive, innit?
And would you ever use a gun?
I'm not answering that.
The sad truth is, these things are becoming recognised as part of life in Bench Hill, and no one seems immune from them. Local priest Father Peter Wright fell victim when youth tried to break into his home.
I was upstairs at about 5 o'clock in the evening and heard some noise that was just strange to me. And so I looked out one of the upstairs windows and saw a couple of teenagers trying to break into what is the office of the two parishes, and gently asked them to go away. They responded not so gently to me, but then did go. About an hour later, I was actually downstairs and then again heard noises that I shouldn't have been hearing. So I suppose really without thinking, I went straight into the garden to see who or what was making the noise, and it was the same two teenagers. So I said something like, "Lads, you best go now." And they turned and began to approach me very, very aggressively. And I then realised that I was blocking their only exit, which is perhaps not the smartest of moves. They came towards me and grabbed for me, so I reacted, threw one of them against a wall, the other one grabbed me. There was a bit of a tussle, and then they began to move away. Then the larger, and I presume the older of the two, produced something in his hand. I couldn't say it was a knife, but it was whatever he was trying to force the window with, so it was definitely a piece of metal, and he began to threaten me with that. So I very definitely stood back. They moved off and then just turned and became very, very aggressive, so I managed to get behind one of the doors and just secured the garden gate. And then after a few moments of screaming and kicking, they went. So I came in and phoned the police, and an officer was here inside 2 minutes. It was when he arrived that I realised, in fact, that I was bleeding from my forehead. And only really when the adrenaline began to dissipate that I realised that I was bruised and that I had actually pulled some ligaments as well. But an incident happened the other day which did cause me to smile when I was talking to the police, and they said, well, what did they look like? And they looked like every other young person on the street, dark clothes, hoods up, maybe a baseball cap as well. And I was walking towards the civic centre, and a couple of teenage lads wearing the uniform came towards me. And for a second I thought, do I cross over? I thought, well, I've never done that before. So I just walked on and glanced at the two lads, and certainly one of them I knew. And he just greeted me with a, hello, Father Peter. All right, lads. And we went happily on our way. So that redresses the balance.
Father Peter speaks highly of the police and their quick response to his call, yet those on the other side of the law are less positive.
What, a mountain bike, see they're going to catch? Come on, do me a favour. The only way you get caught in Wythenshawe is by someone either watching your shit or they'll crash it.
There ain't a lot of police. The police say on the TV that they've got everything locked off and that, but the police ain't got shit locked off.
Yeah, they're cutting off fed jobs. They need more police, if anything.
You don't ever see police around there hardly. Just at night times and that's it. Never during the day.
About.
This problem is something the police too have recognised.
No police officer who's got the responsibility for managing any area will say he's got enough police officers. You could always do with another box of police officers to get the extra staff out of. But at the end of the day, we have to work with the staff we've got. And luckily, I've got some very good staff, very young in service, but still very dedicated young staff. One thing that seems to be a big problem on our area is the underreporting of crime. More so on the low-level crimes. When I say low-level, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I mean more like antisocial behaviour, minor criminal damage. There seems to be, anecdotally, a tolerance towards that type of crime and an underreporting of it. And we've done all sorts trying to get people. I've been on the radio, papers, you name it, trying to get things to do. We've just had a good idea for a poster, so I'm going to speak to the Crime and Disorder Reduction Partnership and turn that into a proper poster for the area. And just see if it is really an underreporting of crime, or it's just anecdotally that people all talk about the same crime and people think there's a lot more going on than there is. And I think it's probably about 50-50, but we need to make sure. One bonus we're going to get shortly is extra police community support officers. We've got 2 at the moment. I'm getting another 5, and then next year I'm going to get another 6 or 7. I know they aren't police officers and they haven't got the same police powers, but they have got a certain number of powers, and they are the eyes and ears of the rest of the police force. They've got police radio, they can get back to us straight away, they communicate different things. They have a good knowledge of the area, and like you say, the fear factor, the fear of crime, they're a good reassuring factor because they're out, they're highly visible, and it's extra patrols to be seen all the time. And I think that's another thing that's going to be a big bonus for this area. They're not going to be working from the police station either, they're going to be working out from the community.
Some problems are not so easily fixed. Looking deeper into the drug and gang issues, it appears that people are becoming involved at a much younger age. A prime example is this family, whose 15-year-old son was drawn in, disrupting all of their lives.
He has a wish to be part of the gang culture. He wants to be part of the gang that runs Wythenshawe. He's become obsessed with guns, knives, drugs. Anybody that's been shot in Wythenshawe, he wants to get in with the gang that have done it or that knows who's done it. When they say to you, well, what do you expect, you live in Wythenshawe, they have no perception that there are actually people in Wythenshawe that do own their own homes, do work very, very hard, do set limits. How many children actually stand in front of somebody and say, see what I can do, and slice the face open with a Stanley knife? When you speak to all the professionals, all they'll say to you is, well, you've been too soft, you didn't set guidelines. Yes, we did set guidelines, we had very strict guidelines. But there are people out there in the community who like to take vulnerable teenagers, girls or boys, doesn't matter, and they will groom them and they will prepare them. These are people who want youngsters into the gun culture, into the knife culture and into the drug culture. The younger they get them, the better it is. And you've got bike runners, you've got runners, you've got kids out there who for a bit of money will do absolutely anything, because these older teenagers and young people in their early 20s have got some power, and they are very, very scary. When you're phoned at home and told that if you don't pay the drug bill, what they're going to do, it is actually very, very scary. So you pay the drug bill, but then you don't pay the drug bill anymore. You then have somebody who's been stamped on, who's been bitten, who's been punched, and you think, I do still love this person. And the next day, can I swear? They're telling you, you're a fucking bitch, you're a fucking bastard, you're fucking this. They're telling your daughter that she's a fucking bitch, and you get all this. You've seen your granddaughter being strangled, you've seen your granddaughter with a carving knife at her throat, you've seen a 2-year-old screaming with terror, you've had your grandchildren in a car where the car's been smashed up because you will not give the teenager money. And nobody out there does anything about it. Nobody out there is helping. They have no idea what it is like to have violent teenagers who take drugs, who are happy to smash your home up, who have no fear whatsoever of the police. They don't know what it's like to see a 14-year-old held down by 3 policemen and a 14-year-old taking on the police. They don't know what it's like. You've done this, you've done that, you've done the other, you've been to all these different areas. Why does that child still not go to school? He can calculate in 10 years how much money he will have made selling drugs. He knows all the drugs that are out there, he knows how to gain access to all the drugs out there, and people are quite happy to provide it to him. But there's nobody out there that is able to help us, because nobody has an idea of what's going on. Nobody wants to go out into Wythenshawe and find out what is happening on the streets.
Whilst the authorities work to change Wythenshawe, there are people in Benchill trying to make a difference at street level. One such group is the United Estates of Wythenshawe.
We don't really get any recognition from the council, and we don't, unfortunately, we don't really work with the authorities, even though we imagined ourselves to be a golden opportunity for local youth and community workers employed by the authorities, because we've got the ear and the attention of local kids.
After owning his own successful security business in Manchester, Greg Davis turned his sights to new challenges when he heard his childhood church was to be closed.
To go back in time, the year was 1996. It had just been vandalised to death. It had become a drug dealing corner in Wythenshawe. In fact, any building in inner city areas that you can describe in one sentence down a mobile phone is a drug dealing corner, and this had become a drug dealing corner. And the church was up for closure. Without a lot of convincing, the church authorities decided we could take it on and provide some kind of youth projects or some kind of community scheme. The easy part was signing the lease. The tricky part was going back to my wife to say I just signed a lease for 40 grand. That was the hard part.
I worked for Greg Davis in the early 90s when he owned a security company. And then when Greg managed to secure this building under his control, he asked us to come in as a member of management, a voluntary manager, in order to help him achieve his goals in supplying something for the public in this area and creating basically what we have here.
I think what makes UEW unique is when we'd got the lease on the building, when we'd signed the paperwork and the building was ours, we then, for that year, went around Wythenshawe identifying who the local leaders were and be really careful you don't misinterpret this. I don't mean the community leaders or the council workers or the social workers that are on a wage or the qualified community workers. I mean the people in Wythenshawe that have got influence at street level, that have got a little bit of persuasion, that the kids look up to, in other words. We identified all the leaders, we gathered them together, we formed a management team out of the local estate leaders, basically said this is our building, what should we do with it? And really the United States as a, I wouldn't call it a project, but the United States as an entity basically grew out the fact that we gathered up the people in Wythenshawe that have got influence at street level.
It is one place where any member of the Benchill community can simply just come in as a drop-in centre. They can seek advice, they can come in and socialise. It's just one of them places where nobody has any fears of coming to. You know, they'll come, they'll be welcomed, and they'll leave smiling. There is somebody in here all the time that somebody can speak to with whatever advice they need, whether it be business, personal. It's going to be there.
I just think we want to provide a forum where anybody can come to us with an idea, and if we feel the idea is going to work, then we're willing to put finances into the idea to make it work. And I think for the last 10 years that's exactly what we've done. We've got 11 businesses. I mean, we're all successful businessmen in our own right, you know, without trying to sound too arrogant or pompous, but we've been able to establish 11 businesses in the last 10 years, one a year. It's not too bad.
I would like to think that both me, Greg and other members of the management team are very well respected within this area. We've all created our own businesses here in Wythenshawe. We all employ local people as well, and we try as much as possible that whenever a pound's spent in Wythenshawe, we strive to keep it in Wythenshawe.
We've got 9 football teams we sponsor on a yearly basis. We've got a basketball team, we sponsor 2 dance troupes, an Irish dance troupe and a street dance, and we sponsor 2 junior schools in visits and trips and a breakfast club. We spend around £9,000 a year in sponsorship. The great thing about it is it's money that's sourced locally. In other words, people that use the gym, we've got 500 members, people that come to pay to use the gym, every bit of finances that is above the cost of running UEW goes back out, and each year it's £9,000, which is great.
As for the actual security of the building, as you're aware, we obviously don't use alarms, etc, etc. But I have office space here, so do other businesses. And I just think it's a respect that we have in this area, and the kids just show that respect to us, but they're showing us the respect for the right reasons. We earn our respect through creating business, creating employment, etc. That's building respect with the right reasons, not through crime or drugs or violence, etc.
What we're up against in Wythenshawe in one sentence is it's cool to be bad. I'll give you an example. 2 kids go to the same school in Wythenshawe. One kid does really well at school, passes all his exams, goes on to college, goes on to university, gets a fairly good job, gets a better job, progresses up the career ladder, does really well for himself, finishes up owning his own house, drives a really nice car, has a chance for designer clothes. The second kid doesn't do very well at school. He leaves early, leaves at 15, drinks, falls into drug taking, begins selling drugs to his friends, small, gets a bit bigger, ends up dealing quite big quantities of drugs on the estate, ends up owning his own house from the profits, drives a nice car, has a chance for designer clothes. What kid on this estate has more respect and a higher status? Which kid? It's the drug dealer. Now I don't condone that, don't even respect it, but that's the way it is. That is the cold truth of inner city Britain.
I think they need help and a lifeline really. I mean, they see the lads, the older lads on the estate driving around in nice cars and loads of money and not working, getting up at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, not caring about anything. They're thinking, well, why should I go out and earn £200 a week when he earns about £300 a day? That's the sort of role model that they're looking at now. The criminal, the drug dealer, the car thief, you know.
The politicians that are capable of making meaningful decisions at street level do not live in this area. I think that If you're asking me to identify one problem about regeneration in any inner city area, specifically Wythenshawe, specifically Benchill, is the people that make decisions don't live with local people. They don't see what we see, they don't experience what we experience.
There's obviously people coming into the area trying to advise these kids, but these kids won't listen to them because they can't relate to them. It's as though they're speaking another language. And it's important that both the government and other agencies involved within these areas, that they use local people that have succeeded and let them educate the up and coming kids that there is a route out of poverty from any council estate should they make the right decisions. And people like me, Greg, and other members of the management team, I feel that we can offer that advice and that reassurance that there is a future for them.
It's like everything. It's money, it's support, it's having the people that can do something behind you. When every time we do try, it's just a big no. Or they'll come down and listen, and they'll sit there and they'll nod and they'll go, "That's brilliant, that's great that. Really, that's brilliant," and then you never see them ever again.
I'm always one for listening to quotes, and one of the best quotes I've heard recently is a local boxer that uses a gymnasium who said if the politicians knew what Benchill was really like, they would be horrified. And I went away from that comment and thought about it, and I thought that's absolutely true. If the politicians knew what Benchill was really like, they would be horrified. They go home at 5 o'clock, they don't see what Benchill's really like.
Government statistics, etc., will have you believe that, yeah, the chances of your house being broken into, your car being broken into, or becoming the victim of a minor crime has been reduced, and rightly so, it has. But what they fail to obviously advise us is that violent crime is up dramatically, and you're quite frankly more risk of being attacked, stabbed or murdered on a trip to the shops than you are your house being broken into while you make that journey.
A lot of kids go around in gangs, and we pulled up to them one night. We said, "You know, you got to move away from here, lads. Why do you walk around in a gang?" And one of them turned around and said, "Would you walk around here on your own at night?" Which is right. You know, I won't walk around there on my own at night, and I'm a pretty big lad.
Having spoken to a lot of local bobbies within this area, many of them are just as frustrated as a member of the public because they do want to get out there and they want to nick these people and they want to put them away. But the reality is they have to stick to regimes and they're unable to do what they think's best.
I think if one thing was to change, we need to get the decision makers, at the very, very least, we need to get the decision makers communicating with the local leaders.
I think you can change it, but it's going to take more than what we're doing here. It's going to take a hell lot more than what we're doing here. And when we are like a 1% of what we could do, but without the support of the government and funding everybody to say, here's an hand, come on then, let's give it a go. We're not going to get anywhere at all. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse.
I'll reiterate again that unless somebody somewhere starts to make a difference in regard dealing with these kids on a one-to-one basis, the problem can only get worse and worse. And what we're trying to achieve here is by getting that one-to-one communication with the kids, the problem kids, and hopefully steer them and guide them to a law-abiding future, if you like.
We feel as if we've provided a template or a blueprint, if you like, for the way youth work should be conducted. If you look at what we've achieved out of a building that was falling apart, that's been vandalised, we've got a gym in the place, we've got a hairdressing salon, we've got nails and beauty, we've got a dance studio, we've got a little cinema, we're about to open a cafe, we've got a play area for children. We're thinking that using this as a blueprint, we could take this as a model to any part of the country. We think it works incredibly well. And if it works in a place like Wythenshawe, which was described as one of the most deprived council estates in England in the year 2000, if it works here, if we can do it, we can do it again.
It seems there have been changes in Benchill, though there may be issues that still need to be addressed. It will be interesting to see what has become of the area in another 6 years.
The one thing I've learned over the years as a politician, first as a councillor, now as a Member of Parliament, is that if you try and regenerate an area by just improving the buildings and improving the street scene, then you fail miserably and very quickly. You have to work with local people. It's their community. And if they want to improve it and you build the improvements on their commitment, then it's sustainable for the long term.